Welcome back into the WCNC Plus Live Impact News Studio. Of course, we have commandeered it for the next couple of nights to talk about the 2026 NFL Draft. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, for round one, we will be starting our coverage from here at 7 o'clock. We will have expert analysis, live reports from Bank of America Stadium. We'll even be at the watch party of a local hopeful first-round pick that begins at 7 o'clock. The Panthers, of course, picking 19th, a little higher up than we're used to, or lower, depending on how you look at it, because of their playoff appearance last year. Here to talk about the Panthers draft strategy is our good friend from the Panthers beat, Sheena Quick. You can find her on X at Sheena_Marie3. Sheena, why are we so draft obsessed?
Because it's fun. It's fun, and it's exciting that the Panthers are finally not picking in the top 10. It's been forever, right?
It has been, yeah.
Forever.
And I don't understand people who are like, I don't pay attention to mock drafts. I will click on a mock draft if you send it out in November. Now, here in Carolina, we had to for the longest time. But obviously, like you mentioned, we don't. I mean, not a top 10 draft pick for the first time and feels like forever. Obviously, 2 years ago, traded back into the first round. That was because of the haul they moved to go get Bryce Young in 23. But does it feel like the Panthers don't enter this first round desperate for like one position or one particular player?
Right, and I think that that's a testament to Dan Morgan. I know we like to measure success by wins and losses, but just the position that this team has been in the last two drafts to go for best player available versus we have to have a cornerback, we have to have a safety, we have to have a running back. And just the moves that they made in free agency kind of freed them up to be able to do that, which is something that you really, really need if you're not picking until 19. There's going to be 18 players off the board before the Panthers are on the clock.
Yeah, so let's talk about Dan Morgan and company. I mean, they have to feel validated by last year's class, right? I mean, it's crowned by the Offensive Rookie of the Year. Just about everybody, rounds 1 through 7, had some contributions to victories last year in a playoff season. How do you think that has kind of confirmed a lot of their process going into draft 3 under Morgan?
I asked Dave Canales this in Indianapolis. I said, you guys seem to be in alignment and everything is going good. He said, well, we don't always agree, but everyone is hurt. And I think that that's what we're seeing in the moves that they're making. They have a very comprehensive scout team that did a really, really good job last season. I want to say they start off with 500 or 600 players it's something crazy on their draft board. Yeah. They whittled it down, but still a good number of players. But there's definitely a sense of validation. Like you said, they're going into this draft having had a very successful draft. No wasted picks, so to speak. There's nobody that they went out and overbought or overpaid for or anything like that in last year's draft. So I think that puts them in a much more comfortable, not too hectic and helter-skelter type of position this year to be able to kind of just look at it with just a logical standpoint versus a desperation standpoint. Like, okay, we didn't hit on this draft. We've got to knock it out of the park on this next one.
Sheena, you always have the pulse of Panthers fans. I'm wondering, what is riling them up a day before the draft? What is pulling at them, and what do they seem to want? What do they seem to not want?
I think it's kind of split. I think there's some people that want a safety or a linebacker, and then there's people that are not completely out on them taking another wide receiver, which Dan Morgan just added some fuel to that fire with that little quotable he gave us last week. He said, listen, there is no rule against selecting a wide receiver in the first round 3 straight years, but I do not think that is what's going to happen. I just don't. I think that last year we were all locked in thinking they have to go defense. They have to go defense just because the 2024 defense was so putrid. They pulled a fast one on us, and it ended up being the Offensive Rookie of the Year, so they clearly know what they're doing. But I think that this is the first time since 2021 they're going defense in the first round, and I think Panthers fans will be okay either way.
Just more big picture stuff. As this team continues to build, go to the playoffs last year, host a game for the first time in a decade, what is the next evolution, and how does this first round kind of fit into where they are?
Well, I think they definitely are expecting to contend for that NFC South title again and not have to wait on the Falcons to win the game to be able to validate that. I think they want to win that thing right out, and I think that just the climate around the rest of the division, they absolutely can do that. And it gives them a basis. But like Bryce Young said yesterday, last season is last season. They know everybody starts, 2026 season 0-0. So they know they've got to go out and prove themselves yet again and just kind of expound upon how last season ended. Because even though they made the playoffs and even though they were division champs, there are quite a few games that they wish they could have back that were right within their grasp. So once they take that next step and start winning those games that can go either way, I think we will truly kind of see this regime step into who they really want to be.
All right, before we get into names at 19, and we're going to dive into that next segment, Coach Dave Canales saying, I don't want to draft for depth. Do you think Dan Morgan feels that way?
I don't think he wants to draft for depth. I think that there are some needs that, there are some positions that they need people to come in and contribute right away. But we know that that's not always the case when it comes to the draft. I do think that Dan Morgan is drafting with the expectation of contribution, to answer your question. I don't think that they're drafting for depth. They would like for depth to be a result, so to speak, but I don't think they're just drafting just to have pieces or to stockpile in one position group. I think they're drafting with the expectation that this person come in and contribute.
All right, she is Sheena Quick. We will be right back. We'll dive into some names at 19, see what the Panthers can come up with. All right, back here with Sheena Quick talking Panthers draft strategy. Sheena, if the board plays out like we are guessing the Panthers want it to, who's there? Who's at 19 where it's a quick run the card up and send it into Roger?
I think if he's there, the Panthers are going to go with the safety out of Oregon, Dylan Thieneman. I think that he's a perfect complement to Trayvon Merrick in that defensive secondary backfield. But if he's not, I know that there's a name that a Panthers Hall of Famer has been banging the table for, and that's Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. Luke Kuechly, there's no better cosign when it comes to being a Carolina Panthers linebacker than Luke Kuechly. So it'll be interesting to see if both of those players are there, which one the Panthers hand the card in for.
That brings up the question, is 19 too early for Rodriguez? I mean, if he's your guy, I guess you get him, but it seems like you could work a deal there, right?
That's possible, and we've seen Dan Morgan do more with less. So I would not be shocked to see the Panthers make a couple of deals throughout the 3 days of the draft. But I do think that they sit tight at 19. And if Thieneman is there, I think it's him. And if he's not, I think Jacob Rodriguez would be the next name up. But they did add, Devin Lloyd this offseason. So that takes a little bit of pressure off the linebacker core. They added Jalen Phillips. They wanted some pressure on the quarterback. So they have, like we said earlier, they've done a good job in free agency of fulfilling some needs, and they have some vets that have experience, and it gives them that flexibility when it comes to the draft where we're like, hey, are they going to take a safety, a linebacker? Are they going to take a tackle? We do not know what's going to happen with
I've been saying that. Like, nobody wants, it's like eating vegetables. Nobody wants one in the first round, but
anything can happen. The only reason that I am reluctant to say they go tackle on day one is because I think that when they extended Ejiro Evero, they have basically told him, we have faith in your scheme. We believe in it. Now we've got to get you some guys so we can see it really, really work. And I think that that's why he's been able to keep a position and, again, get that vote of confidence with that contract extension. So I do think that they go defense, but they could take a tackle as early as, on day two. You just never know when it comes to the Panthers. They're playing this thing close to the vest. Like, there's no leaks. Dan Morgan is giving us nothing.
Yeah, they are. And, I mean, if there are two ducks on the pond from Oregon, if there is Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end everybody seems enamored with, plus Dylan Thieneman, both available at 19, do the Panthers bite? Do the Panthers go offensive weapon again?
I think they go safety. And there's another free agent tight end out there that has not signed by the name of David Njoku, who, if push come to shove and they want to add some more veteran presence in that tight end room, I don't think that he's a name that you can really rule out. Of course, they have Trimble. Trimble is a vet in his own right, but then Njoku brings another dynamic to that room as well. So I do not think that they go tight end on day one. I think you definitely are going to see a defensive player.
Oh, okay, so you're hard set on defense. I mean, what is this obsession with receivers? I mean, it would be 3 years in a row. Dan Morgan didn't rule it out. As you mentioned, that great quote, no rule against it. Is he just is he toying with us? How do we know after what he pulled last year?
I think he's playing with us. I think he gets a rise out of watching us scramble and try to figure out what's on his mind, what he's going through, transcribing his videos, trying to see if there's some type of hidden hint. But he's very, very good with the poker face and playing that card really, really close. So I do think he was just kind of giving us a quote and joking around with us. I think they go defense.
Come on, KC Concepcion, the local kid, need a guy to take the top off. You just think it's a good story. Not a good strategy.
I think it's a good story, not necessarily a good strategy. I think that they're happy with the receivers they have. That does not rule out them adding playmakers later on. They also added Mechie. So you have Jimmy Horn that is a speed demon that can take the top off also. So I think that when it comes to that, you don't necessarily need to go get a wide receiver, but you do want some depth on the defensive side of the ball. We saw I still don't know how the Panthers beat the Rams last year with the amount of injuries they had that first time around. And the injuries that were sustained in the San Francisco game, you saw J.C. Horn go down. You saw his backup, Corey Thornton, go down with a broken leg. They were down to CB4. And Mike Jack, out in San Francisco. That's a situation that the Panthers don't want to find themselves in again. So I think that, of course, you're not drafting for depth. If you do go Thieneman at 19, you're expecting Thieneman to go in there and play.
What about Lathan Ransom?
I think that Lathan is going to continue to develop also.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can have too many.
Yeah.
Because we're still talking about only really 3 back there, really, that played.
Right. So, okay, let's talk tackle, because there was reporting today, all of a sudden it was like tackle, and the potential to have to trade up to get one if there's a run. Do you think Dan Morgan would be willing to trade up from 19 and part with assets to get an offensive tackle that you're really eyeing for 2027?
Not on day one. Not on day one. Day 2 and day 3, we could see that, but not on day 1. I think that Dan has been really, really good at retaining and going out and acquiring draft capital versus wasting it, which is something that we saw for years and years and years that had Carolina in the state that they were 2 seasons ago. But I'm not against them taking a tackle. I think they take a tackle. I do.
I do too.
Going into this season, the offensive line was the most, stable unit. They brought everybody back. And then this season, it's almost the complete opposite. Austin Corbett's gone. You need a center. Cade Mays is gone. Ickey is out injured. You're getting Rob Hunt back. You're getting Damian Lewis back. But you have Taylor Moton, who's like the Iron Man. But I do think that you do have to take a tackle in this draft at some point. Even if it comes on day 2 or 3, I definitely think they kick the cans on the tackle. And it's not drafting for depth. This person is going to be expected to come in and contribute with the departures from that offensive line last year.
All right, we're going to have much more with Sheena Quick talking Panthers draft coming up. Back here one more time with Sheena Quick talking Panthers draft. Sheena, what do the Panthers absolutely need to come out of these 3 days with?
We just mentioned it. They need a tackle. They need a safety. They need a linebacker. On the offensive side of the ball, other than tackle, I wouldn't be surprised if they add another running back just for a little bit of insurance. Jonathan Brooks has looked good this offseason training with Chuba. I know they had like a little park session over the weekend. He's looked good, but he is coming off of a second ACL tear. So I do think that they look at running backs, and they might add a tight end later. I don't think that wide receiver is at an absolute position of need to where they would, trade up and part with assets or even part with players. So I do think that they need to take care of the holes on the defensive side of the ball that injuries created towards the end of last season.
What would the Panthers do in round 1 that would stun you? Besides, of course, drafting a quarterback. Let's remove that.
If they went wide receiver again, I would absolutely be stunned. I would be shocked. I just don't think that there is, and they may add a cornerback also. I'm sorry, they may add a cornerback also because this is the last year on Mike Jackson's contract. They definitely need to pay him sooner rather than later. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but he signed with Athletes First with David Mulugeta. So he's absolutely going to be paid by someone. The Panthers need to make sure that it's them. So we can't rule out them going after a cornerback either because we don't know what the money talks or where they are in that process because this is year 2 of the 2-year extension that Mike Jackson signed last season.
All right, we did hear from some of the Panthers on Tuesday as off-season workouts began. Bryce Young was asked about another play caller in his young NFL career. What do you think the Brad Idzik-Bryce Young relationship looks like from the start? They obviously have one. Now it's a little different.
It is a little different, and I don't think any of us could really quantify that, so to speak, just because we don't know how much input Idzik had on the play calls, because of course Dave Canales was calling the plays the first two seasons. But I do think that it won't be as much of a drastic turn as it has been in Bryce's first 2 years, because Reich and Thomas Brown were two totally opposite sides of the coin, whereas Canales and Idzik have been together for quite a few years. And so it might not be a complete deviation from the way that Dave Canales would call the game, just a different disbursement of game day responsibilities, so to speak. So I don't think he will have a huge change or drop off. I think it's going to be as it's always been. It's just going to be that the call is coming from somewhere different.
And what do you notice from these guys when you talk to them about coming into this season as defending division champs? I mean, that's a different target on your back, and now the next step is expected.
I think they're hungry. I think just making it to the wild card was not enough. Losing by just a few points was not good enough. I think that they are very hungry. If the only people that all the doubters for the Carolina Panthers came outside of that locker room. Everybody on that team last season absolutely believed that they belonged in the playoffs. They felt like they belonged in the second round, moving past the Rams. So the gist I get from them is just hungry. They're hungry. They're not satisfied with just making it there. They want to get there, cause a disruption, and move deep into the playoffs. And they feel like they have the personnel to do that. No one's resting on their laurels like, hey, we were 8-9, but we won the division. Everybody's like, no, we got to go get it again. And I do think that they would prefer to not have to wait until a Saints-Falcons game to see if they're going to win the division. I think they want to win it outright. And I think that they absolutely are in a position to do so, not only within the confines of Mint Street, but just how the rest of the division looks right now. I think it's theirs for the taking.
Speaking of the division, obviously, basically everybody's picking before the Panthers because of the way things ended. Who could Tampa, New Orleans pick up that would give Panthers fans nightmares a bit?
I don't really think there's anybody they could pick up that would give them nightmares, so to speak, because they still have to play the game. And I know that's a very PC answer to give you, but we felt that way when they drafted Bijan Robinson, when they drafted Kyle Pitts, and for whatever reason, the Panthers, Bryce Young just has their number. It's almost like the Falcons forget that they have those weapons on their team. I think that it's going to be interesting. The Saints are going to have a different look to them with, the addition of ETN. And I think that poses the bigger risk to the Panthers because he does have experience. He's coming in as an experienced back. This isn't a rookie back. So I don't know there's anybody that jumps out that would just put fear into Panthers fans' minds or hearts, as far as the other division and where they're picking.
Last question, non-Panthers related. Do you have a favorite prospect in the first round?
Do I have a favorite prospect? I like Avion Terrell out of Clemson. Yep. It'll be interesting to see. He might even be there at 19, and then we're having a whole different conversation because he has.
They're not allowed to draft Clemson Tigers. That's a rule. You can draft 3 receivers in a row.
But no Tigers, right? I know that it'll be interesting to see what impact that hamstring injury has on where he goes. But if he's there at 19, dare I say you shake the table and take Terrell? I don't know. But that's one of my favorite prospects in this particular draft. But right. I'm a secondary type of girl anyway, so I'm always going to be biased to the safeties and the DBs.
Those are the speed guys. Those are the track stars, just like Sheena Quick. Sheena, thank you for joining me. Thank you. Thanks for carrying me a little bit with these North Carolina allergies. We appreciate you. Best of luck on draft night. We'll be following you. All right, a reminder that we will have draft night coverage beginning Thursday at 7 o'clock, take you all the way through to the beginning of the draft, and then we will be on the clock as the Panthers are with live reaction and analysis to pick 19, or we'll see where they pick when all is said and done. See you tomorrow night.